What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're talking Dynasty Startup. We're looking at a recent 12-team mock draft that I did. We're going to be diving into kind of where the ADP value is at. I'm going to be going over best values, my favorite picks of the draft, reaches that are out there, but just kind of strategy as well. What are you looking at when you get into the first 12 rounds? And then we're going to be talking about best player availables and how to do your team builds. What does that team build look like? And what does that look like moving forward? So let's get into it. So when we did the Dynasty Startup, here's what we had. We had a 12-team Superflex tight end premium. The tight end premium is 1.75. So it gives the tight ends enough of a bump, right? I like 2.0, but 1.75 is good enough for tight end premium. We also did 3-round reversal. And if you don't know what that is, essentially after the first 2 rounds, instead of the first pick getting the third, in the third round, that first pick, it instead goes back to the back end. So the 112 gets the 112, the 201, and then the 301. So it's an interesting twist on kind of the Dynasty Startup format. It definitely balances out a little bit, and you can kind of see how that plays out in your draft. And it's start 10. So it's super flex, where you can start 2 QBs if you need to. Start 10, so a little bit of a deeper bench, 1.75. So let's get into the rounds. Let's talk about them. So really what you're looking at here is, obviously in super flex, you're going after the top quarterbacks. And really, there's a QB tier part, right? QB 10. So when you're looking at the Kyler Murray tier, right? So you have Allen, Mahomes, Stroud, Hurts, Caleb, Lamar, Burrow, Richardson, Herbert, and then Murray. And then there definitely is a tier break, right? So when you're looking at kind of how that tier next tier, then Jordan Love at the back end of that kind of second round. However, the guy that started Allen and Love probably is excited about that start, considering where they're at in terms of value-wise and where they finished last year. Now, after that, the next tier of QBs, it goes Brock Purdy, Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Goff, Prescott, and May. And when you're looking kind of at the values there, I like some values. There's some good picks in there from the quarterback perspective. Tua going to the 4th round at 412 is probably the lowest I've seen him go in drafts. He's kind of around that range, but 412, 5th round in Superflex, when he's going to get that contract extension, I think that's interesting. And when you're looking at running back tiers in the first 4 rounds, really you have Bijan, Brees, Gibbs, McCaffrey, and then Taylor is generally speaking kind of your 5, right? Those are your 5 guys that are going there. And then you have a little bit of a tier break. You got Barkley and ETN. Those guys are kind of going in that after that range. And really running back 6 to 12 are pretty interchangeable. You could probably go deeper than that if you wanted. But that's generally speaking where that tier is. That's kind of where we're looking at the tiers. So just so if you're in that reversal and you're sitting at the back end, what quarterbacks could you get, right? If you want to kind of take a quarterback with one of those picks at 112 or 201, who could you possibly kind of get in that range? Now, my favorite best value kind of out there that I like is Dak Prescott at QB 16. Everybody knows I'm a Dallas fan. If you watch the channel, if you watch my content for the years, but QB 16, man, in an offense that he could lead the league in passing attempts, there is no running back in that room that scares defenses. When you're looking at it from an efficiency metric, he was very good last year. And, he's a top 10 QB, right? Top 5 in certain aspects, especially down the stretch of the season. He's the best value right now. If you can get him, like the team that got him, Brown, Olave, and Hurts, that's an excellent start when you're thinking about the quarterback position and the value that you got there. Now, my favorite pick is Kyler Murray. QB 10 and Kyler Murray, and the way he built that team with Richardson and Murray, it was just I'm salivating with those picks there. But Murray, to me, is in line for top 5 QB finish. Offense is great. Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. Again, they upgraded their offensive line. They upgraded their running back room. I just think he's going to be more efficient this year. His rushing upside with that Konami ability, he has top 5 written all over him. And if you can get him in the second round as your QB2, that's winning upside there for your league. And that's really why it was one of my favorite picks in this draft there. Now, as far as an ADP reach, now this is, again, with rookies, they're all across the board. It's hard to kind of determine where someone falls in love with a rookie, right? But Drake May at QB 15 is a reach according to DLF's ADP. Right now, May is actually going to QB 20. So that's 5 picks above consensus in terms of quarterbacks. But I can't fault someone for taking Drake May as their QB2 if they believe in him, if the build is right? When you're looking at that, and we're going to dive into team builds here in a little bit. But that was definitely the ADP reach in terms of these 4 rounds. Now, when you're looking at also the tight end premium, just to kind of go over that, remember, Laporta, McBride going back to back right there in that third round. Then you have Kincaid, and Bauer's going to tight end 4. Now he's kind of valued at tight end 2. So according to that, this would be definitely a value pick there. But those are where those tight ends are going in that kind of format, and in terms of just where their value's at. Now, rounds 5 through 8, this is where you start getting kind of some conversations here, right? So then you're going to see the other tight ends go off the board. You're getting Kyle Pitts, Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, Hawkinson. Kelsey going early, win now, build there. Really then, the late round tight end 1, right? So you get those guys, and then you're really looking at, okay, after that, there's a tier break. So are you willing to get Jake Ferguson and Ingram as your tight end 1 and tight end premium? And I think that's a discussion you have to kind of debate. Is there value there? I love Ferguson going as tight end 1 on a team based on the build and where it's at. I think Ferguson could be that wide receiver 2 in Dallas. Ingram, again, we've seen that kind of that value, but will he kind of have that fall off like we saw from Darren Waller, right? Down late in the career, in terms of tight ends with his profile. Are you comfortable kind of moving with him at tight end 1? And if you are, you can collect some value, some other guys at other positions there. Now, the other, kind of theme of these rounds 5 through 8, veteran versus youth, you really have to decide, okay, where are you going in terms of, would you rather have Kirk Cousins, if you're going to build around that in the 6th round, or Bryce Young, right? Or, you're going to go Brian Thomas Jr., or do you kind of lean Jordan Addison, Pickens, and those guys? The other one is like Ken Walker versus Jonathan Brooks. Who would you rather have? Obviously, to me, I mean, Jonathan Brooks, sitting there at that range, I like him going in before Walker, just because you could re-roll that position, you get younger at a position where it's like, hey, what can you do for me next? Brooks seems to have that mindset, but you have to look at that from a veteran versus youth standpoint. Is who are you leaning on, right? Like, where are you going in terms of that? Like Debo or Keon Coleman, right? Or, Devontae, Mike Evans sitting there, but in Jaden Reed's right in between him and Stephon Diggs. So you really have to determine where your veteran play is going to be, where your youth plays. And we're going to talk about a veteran pick that I really like. And in land of the QB2, also, like if you wait on QB2, so if you're not one of those guys going to pick early, those QB2s, that Tua range, that Trevor Lawrence range, the Brock Purdy range. If you're like, no, I'm going to wait, then you're really looking at JJ, Kirk Cousins, Watson, Young, Nix, Mayfield in there. The guy that could be interesting, Levis, right? Will Levis has probably got that 1-year prove-it deal this year. I know he's at a 4-year deal, but he's got 1 year to really show what he could do in that offense. These guys are all volatile. Now, sometimes you hit on it, like Baker Mayfield last year, probably going a little later. But Bryce Young could be that guy. Maybe you look at Bryce and say, hey, he can be my QB2. Or maybe you go 3 QBs in the first 6 rounds and you're comfortable with his value where it's at. Now, my favorite kind of, best value in this rounds, Trey Benson at running back 16. We talked about Trey and Jonathan Brooks in terms of like who would you rather have in rookie drafts. But Brooks went in the 5th round, and then you're looking at Benson going in the 8th round. And, again, with where he landed and what his expected volume can be after Connor's leave, you have to like that. You have to like what James Conner's doing in that offense. And if Benson's better, younger, can do that, value at running back 16, and you don't have to reach on a running back in the 5th round, right? I don't see that huge of a difference between Brooks and Benson's outcomes this year. So if you can add as many assets as you can in the other 2 rounds, right, in those 3 rounds, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then grab a guy like Trey Benson in the 8th, you kind of have to do that. I think that's a value there. And where he's going around, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, I still think that he could have value towards the back end of the season where you're plugging him in your lineups for a championship. Trey Benson's a hell of a value right now. My favorite pick, let's go old. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 37. Listen, I love Puka Nacua, and I think he's going to still do well in this offense. But you can get Cooper Kupp at wide receiver 37 in that range. I'm going to smash that all day. I think that he's a value right there. When you're thinking of kind of where he is going, Keon went over him, Debo, Devontae Evans, Reed, Diggs, man, Xavier Worthy, JSN going ahead of Kupp. If you're on a win now team and you're kind of building it out and you're looking in that 6th, 7th range for your wide receiver 3 and Kupp is on the board, he could put up top 5 numbers this year. I mean, that's where the value is, right? That's where you can kind of extract the value, go get somebody that can put up wide receiver 1 numbers this year. And again, the health concerns are always going to be there. It is what it is. It's already baked into ADP right now, but it's still a value because if he performs like he can and you get those top 5 finishes there, you win. You win the value game, and you probably win your fantasy matchups too. That's my favorite pick here, sitting here in that 7th round at the end of the 7th. Now, as far as ADP reach right now, Rashee Rice. Now, I say this with a caveat. The reason why it's a reach is because he just can't stay out of trouble, right? That wide receiver 30 would have been value 2 months ago. But now, when you're looking at his value, I mean, he's dipped down the, mid 30s, late 30s in terms of value. I don't think it's a reach. I don't mind taking a shot on Rashee Rice and his talent. I get questions all the time about his trade value. Early second. If I can give him up an early second for Rashee Rice, I'll take the freaking plunge and go for it, right? I don't know how many guys would do that, but probably 201 to 204 maybe would be in that range. Maybe a 201 and a future third or something to kind of get up and go get him. But a wide receiver 30 is a reach. I don't mind reaching there. Now, kind of the next rounds here, in the rounds 9 through 12. This is really the lands of the running back when we're looking at kind of like, that running back to everybody's going late round running back. Everybody's going zero running back or anchor running back with one good guy and going for it. So this is where you get to take. This is really what's going to make the money this year for a lot of teams, that they hit on that late round running back that's going to kind of outperform expectations according to ADP. You're going to see a ton of running backs in there, either rookies or young guys. Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears, even like Jerome Ford's in there. Brian Robinson is an interesting piece. Marshawn Lloyd going in the 11th round. Jalen Wright going in the 12th round. Blake Corum going in the 9th round, especially with the Kyren Williams kind of news about him being kind of not healthy, right? So you're really looking at, okay, what guys can I target in this 9th to kind of 12th round that I think have running back 2 upside, or they're my running back 3 and I could have some spike weeks. That's kind of what you're looking for in this range. Now, there's also some deep quarterback shots here, and whether or not Stafford, Rodgers, they really fit to me, or even Geno Smith, they fit that mold of like, that's your QB3, but you took a kind of project as your QB2. Bryce, JJ, kind of those guys, Drake May. So you're looking like, hey, I'm going to take one of these guys that can give me some points this year. And if I hit on those other young guys, then that's just a replaceable asset, right? That's really what you're looking at there. As far as like Justin Fields is the ultimate crapshoot. What are you doing with him in the 11th round? You're just going to take him and hope that he kind of finds this job. He earns that job this year. Other guys, Daniel Jones is, again, another deep quarterback shot. I mean, realistically, Daniel Jones might be on another team next year, or he bounces back, and now you're looking at a fantasy assets at QB 13 to 18 range, right? Now, rookie wide receivers go in this range. That's that tier of rookie wide receivers that we've seen. So, like Xavier Leggett's going to be in there. Adonai Mitchell's going to be in there. Pearsall is going to be in there. So, like those type of players, Polk, Roman Wilson, that's where you start seeing kind of that second tier of wide receivers kind of going, just to show you that value. Now, as far as like my favorite best value, Deontay Johnson. Smash this all day. Matt Harmon talked about how good he was efficiency last year, how Dave Kidowie's offense. I don't see any scenario outside of Bryce being injured or Deontay getting injured that he doesn't smash this ADP. That's a hell of a value at wide receiver 43 around guys like Amari Cooper, Xavier Leggett, Watson, those type of guys, Jameson Williams. If I can get Deontay Johnson there as my wide receiver 3 or 4, I think that's excellent value in that range. Now, my favorite pick is Jalen Wright. I think that running back 35 is a hell of a value for a guy that's in an offense custom made for him. It's built for him in front of guys that get injured all the time. Devon Chan, I love him. Gets injured, right? Raheem Mostert, old, injured, can happen. So Jalen Wright to me is that perfect stash guy. You're not really giving up too much in the 12th round. The stasher guy that could have some spike weeks of running back 1. That's good value, and that's good strategy in that range. Now, the last 2 rounds are just going to kind of go over, 3 rounds, 13, 14, and 15. Really, this is where you start getting really deep. And in tight end premium, you're going to start seeing some of those later round tight ends going to go. Cade Otton going in that 15th round. Tucker Kraft, Cole Kmet, Musgrave. What tight end do you want from Green Bay, essentially? Pat Freiermuth, I think, is interesting. I've seen a lot of kind of talk around him out there. And, in Arthur Smith's offense, on a team that really does kind of need that second threat for them, right? With George Pickens there, I do think Freiermuth could play a role. I don't mind taking a shot as him as my tight end 2 in that 13, 14, 15 range. I think that's not a bad value, right? It's kind of like that Hunter Henry mold, like type value asset. Hey, you could be a tight end 2. And we all know a tight end scores a touchdown, they're all automatically a tight end 1, the way the tight end position is. So I think that's interesting there. Now, the one thing I did put on here, and it's kind of a little bit of it's a homage to one of my favorite Christmas movie, Rudolph. The misfit toys. We talked about this all the time when I used to coach varsity basketball. We talked about misfit toys of just plugging pieces together. This is really what you're getting with this range, right? Marvin Mims, misfit toy. Gus Edwards, kind of a misfit toy. Quentin Johnston, will they bounce back? Dontavian Wicks, misfit toy. Everybody loves Wicks on the YouTube channel. You guys on the poll I put out, you thought I was trolling because I didn't put Wicks on there. But Green Bay has a ton of weapons. A lot of people love Wicks out there. But is he really going to get the volume? Is he really going to get the targets and the target share? I don't know, right? Corley being in there. But you're also getting like Rashad Bateman always gets buzz in the offseason. So like really this is where do you go like that youth route? Kamani Vidal, who is probably a little overdrafted in this one. Or do you take a shot on one of these guys? Gabriel Davis, will he bounce back? Jacksonville, right? Be that wide receiver too. Cortland Sutton was kind of a misfit toy last year. Now he's not this year. Going in it because all the touchdowns he scored, but can we rely on him? Now, when you're looking at some other guys after that area, so I went through ADP, late round draft targets. Drew Lock, I think in Superflex is interesting, sitting behind DeAndre Jones. I think that's that's worth it. Jameis Winston, I didn't put him on here, is another one. Deshaun Watson looks kind of just beaten down. That could be a guy that you just kind of go target late in drafts. They could get some value bump there. Running backs, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Rasheen Ali, Dylan Lobby, Blake Watson, Will Shipley, Audrey Estime. We talked about those guys on the Dynasty Stashes podcast that me and Leo Pasica do. Go check that out. It's on the live channel over here at the channel. And then you have A.T. Perry, Jacob Cowan, Demarcus Robinson, Brendan Rice, Trey Tucker, kind of some wide receivers that I think could have value later that you could grab. And in tight ends and tight end premium, Theo Johnson for the Giants has a role possibly if Waller's not there. Jared Wiley for Kansas City, love that spot. Eric All, the Bengals. Those are some of those late round tight ends that you could kind of grab in there. Now, here is the board. So here's what the board looks like. And you can see who drafted. You can see I drafted from the 12th spot there. And this is a good time to stop it, pause it, whatever you want to do to kind of give you an idea of what that board looks like in terms of how they did. And these are very smart people that drafted in this draft. They're really handpicked by me. And it really kind of was guys that I know trust that playing some really heavy hitter leagues and some big money leagues too. And that's why I kind of wanted to do it. Now, I wanted to go through 3 builds that are interesting. I'm going to talk about my build. Just for that third round reversal build. I picked this spot to kind of show you if you didn't know what it looks like. So essentially, with that third round reversal, what it does, and I probably should have taken Kyler Murray, but I wanted to kind of not take a quarterback to show you what quarterbacks you could get on the back end. And so Amon-Ra and Marvin Harrison really started young with the wide receivers. And then I went Trevor Lawrence and Tua, 2 guys I think could bounce back, Kyle Pitts and Bryce. So essentially, I took those 3 quarterbacks that I think could have those kind of bounce back in terms of Young and Lawrence. Tua probably gives me my solid QB1. And then you got Kyle Pitts, who could have that breakout tight end season. I probably overdrafted Keon Coleman. I'm going to get some crap for that on YouTube. But then you have Javonte and Brown. So I kind of went 0 running back to show you guys what that kind of looks like. Javonte Williams and Chase Brown, who I think I really like. Gus Edwards is a plug-in. Gibson with that PPR upside. That's kind of how I lean. So this was to show you kind of the build of, don't take the quarterback in the first 2 rounds, but that reversal allows some, guys that you can grab at 301. And there was other guys on the board too, right? You could have took Jaden. I could have took Brock Purdy. Those Drake May. We kind of talked about them. Dak, Jared Goff, but I went Lawrence there. Now, my next favorite team, probably my favorite team at the beginning of these drafts, Richardson Murray is a great stack for the quarterback position, just getting those 2 guys in Superflex. And then McBride and Moore, Higgins, and Thomas, I think those are very good value. I love McBride's value. Moore, I think, is getting undervalued right now as the wide receiver 1 in Chicago. Swift as that kind of running back 1 for his team. Godwin Cooper, he really just let the value come to him. And he said, hey, I'll take a shot at Michael Penix Jr. and kind of stash him. Really big fan of how he started his squad here. Not huge on the back end. I don't love his picks 12 through 15, but I do love his first kind of first 11 picks are very solid. And it shows you kind of, again, 0 running back build. But when you get those Konami quarterbacks, how much value you can get out of that spot. Now, again, kind of wanted to show you different builds here. So this is really that anchor running back build. So CD, Brees, Brock Purdy could be a very solid QB in Superflex format. Then you get Pittman Collins, kind of upside wide receiver 2 values. But with Lamb, you have a top wide receiver option there. Kyron getting plugged in there with Hall. Then he went to Sean, who that's an ultimate boom or bust asset, right? What is he going to be this year? I think that's a big question mark. Then you go Ingram and Schultz. He's got Deontay in there, Zamir, Derek Carr, those type of guys. It's an interesting build. I kind of like the build, just kind of go through there. So here are all the builds again, just so you can kind of give a look at, like, hey, where are you drafting? You have a dynasty draft coming up. This is kind of who is there based on value and based on team builds, but always be flexible, right? We know that as we're kind of drafting our dynasty teams, you got to be flexible as the board kind of falls to you. If you want a dynasty podcast, go check out in the description. I put our Deciphering Dynasty that I do with Leo Pasiga, one of the best dynasty minds out there. Go check that out. If you have any questions in terms of Dynasty, you can go jump in our Patreon. We're running kind of a discount for 12-month discount right now. So go take a look at that, or just hop on, Twitter. You can DM me, or in the comments here. This is where I really want to kind of engage with you guys. What bills did you like? Do you think what pick sucked in terms of me? Don't pick on anybody else. You go ahead and pick on me. Did I reach on Trevor Lawrence? What do you guys think there? So I hope this helps you kind of get an idea of what your draft can look like, and just kind of helps you kind of draft in a 3-round reversal. So appreciate you guys. See you guys next time.